In order to share a PowerPoint presentation in Zoom, you will need to export your presentation notes and create that in a separate window, because if you don't create a separate window, you'll end up sharing your notes with your audience, and that's not what we want to do. Just so everyone understands what we're talking about here, most people are familiar with the presenter view in PowerPoint. This is where you have your slides. You can look ahead to what slides are coming and see your notes, but this is always what we want the presenter to see and not the audience. So how do we do this in Zoom? First, we need to export the notes in the presentation. We can do that by going to File, Print, and then when you have your print options here, look at the Layout pull-down menu and make sure that you have Notes selected. If you don't select notes, you're just going to export your slides, and we don't need the slides. We want the notes. So I'm going to make sure I have my notes selected, and now you can see that the slides come with the notes, and this is helpful because now I can see my notes in a separate window. Now you'll notice not every slide has notes, and some of them the text is a little small, and that's because I didn't go through and change the size. And let me show you what I mean about that before we export it. Because if you export with the font in a really small size, you may have trouble viewing it. So I'm going to go to my slide, I'm going to go to my notes, and then, oops, I accidentally went into presenter view. Let me go to my home screen. I'm going to go to the slide that I need to change the size on. I'm going to select all the text, make it a larger size text. It doesn't change on this screen, but when I go back to my export as print, guess what's going to happen? Now that text is bigger. Okay, now there's one slide where it was a little smaller than it meant to be. I'm not going to fix that right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to export and PDF, or I can just go right to open and preview, and that's actually what I'm going to do, because that's what I would do even if I made a PDF. So now I have my presentation in a separate window with the slide notes, and the notes are sizes that I can read on my screen. And it's just a matter of comfort in terms of the size of the text that you want to use and how you arrange your windows. We're doing these videos for people who are in situations with laptops or where you only have one screen. If you have multiple screens, of course, put the presentation view in a different screen. Make it easier on yourself. But if you only have this option, then you'll need to take these steps. So now that I've got this window with my notes, I want to make my PowerPoint window my presentation window. So how do I do that? I need to go to the slideshow. See, when I make this window a lot smaller, it's a lot more tricky to use, but it can be done. I'm going to set up my slideshow, and I'm going to make sure that the slideshow type is browsed by an individual parentheses window. That's what I want, because that will allow me to make my slides visible in the entire window, which is what I'm going to share. Let me show you what that means. If I play from the start, there's my first slide, and it comes up in that window. Now I've still got this document here in preview, which is all of my slides and all of my notes, but notice that while I scroll through these, I can't scroll through this. I have to use the arrows when I'm in this application, or I can hover my mouse. I can do one or the other, but it's difficult to do both at the same time. Actually, what I just did there was I used my trackpad mouse to scroll through my notes, and I'm using the arrows on the keyboard to change my slides. And it's not great, but there's our solution. So now I'm ready to share it in Zoom. I'm going to go to my Zoom window. I'm going to share my screen once that option becomes available. And let me mute myself here so that I don't get feedback. All right, now my options are to share my screen in Zoom. You have to be careful here that you select the right thing. Now this right here, remember, that's the presentation with notes. That's not for the audience, that's just for us. This is my full desktop, and then these are the Zoom tools. I want to share just the PowerPoint window, and when I select that, you'll see Zoom brings up the highlight around just that window, and if I'm not on the right slide, I can always go back to it and use my arrows, get to the start of the slideshow, and then I have to get my slide notes ready. So this window here is my notes. This window here is my slides, and you see the highlighting. That's the part that's going to be shared with your audience. It is a little bit clunkier than Google Slides, but it can be done. It just takes a little bit of practice, and that is using PowerPoint with Zoom.